So, the other day I found myself going down a rabbit hole on YouTube that I didn't really expect to go down. As initially, YouTube often does, it recommended me a video that seemed pretty innocent at first, about a Twitch streamer walking down the streets of modern day Japan, and of course, I clicked on it because I wanted to take a look at modern day Japan, see what it looks like, and what are some of the cool activities that you could do in case I ever want to visit. And the first few minutes of the video were in fact pretty normal. About 20 or so minutes into it, we see a Japanese man walk up to the girl in person, and she doesn't understand a word that he says as he's solely speaking in Japanese, but she's trying to make as much conversation with him as she manages while being an English speaker. But pretty quickly we start to gather that the man's intentions were much darker than we initially expected them to be, as he immediately gets very close to her, gets very touchy, and she's laughing throughout the whole time, but it's one of those uncomfortable laughs where you can really tell that she didn't really want to be there at the time. And then soon enough, he starts to try and grope the streamer. Immediately she stops all interactions with him and tries to leave, but the man starts to follow her for a good 3 or so minutes. At this point I was upset, I was very uncomfortable, myself having experienced some pretty similar, not so great events. It kind of hit a little closer to me because it wasn't something I hadn't seen prior.
Oh, whoa, man, stop. Stop. Yo, stop it. No, just don't touch it. Bye. No, leave me alone. Yo, man, you following me? Oh my god. Okay, bye. No. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is literally my life. Oh god. What do I do? I don't even fucking know. I can't understand this. Run? Run. I can find a garbage. Okay, just think he understands. Oh my god, man, I gotta go. Stop following me. Oh my god, I fucking hate this guy. Oh my god, I hate my life. Does he think that's okay to do? I don't even understand. It's fine. Those birds.
We see her going to a Japanese convenience store until the dude runs off, and she immediately breaks down with her chat about the events. The video made me look deeper into what seemed to be an epidemic in Japan, and while I myself don't live there are plenty of online testimonies of people who do in fact visit or often live in the area who claim that this is actually a pretty common situation. So for the next few hours, I watched hundreds of videos of women being stalked on the streets, groped sometimes, and even shouted at. And even some darker ones where guy streamers would stumble upon women who were clearly blackout drunk, or being drugged perhaps, being taken away by large groups of guys claiming to be friends or acquaintances from school, but who seemed so suspicious in their demeanor that it made it hard to really believe that they were just people who knew the girls. So what exactly is happening in Japan that these events seem to be so normal in their day-to-day life? Even having to make women-only trains to fight the amount of groping women and teenage girls are also facing on these public transportation. The chikan phenomenon, chikan being the Japanese word for a groper, is a massive open secret that many publications have now talked about, even having gropers talk about their victims in books where they boast about having groped over thousands of women of all ages, and one of the most famous ones being Chikan, the bizarre true accounts of train and street gropers in Tokyo, Japan, a book which details the events of perpetrators who spent so much time groping women in public transport that they proudly recall these events as an achievement, as if these events wouldn't come to change and shape the lives of the victims in traumatic ways, especially the ones who were children at the time. The absolute lack of empathy shown for these cases are quite alarming, as it seems Japan suffers from a safe face syndrome, much harder than really anywhere else. In Japan, it's not well seen for women to speak out about these sort of events, and anger and resentment towards the perpetrator themselves aren't taken well, instead being pushed towards a more silent victim sort of route, and a more passive approach in general. Women who face such terrible crimes often they're ridiculed if they choose to speak out without any form of anonymity, but even then some women have still decided to take it upon themselves to speak out, and even take some of these cases to the Japanese court system. The problem there is that Japan's laws towards any form of sexual assault, they're still very backward, often citing laws like the victims of assault have to prove that they were in fact unable to defend themselves in the face of an attack to even be taken seriously, which compromises a lot of cases of family assaults where parents, for example, will assault their child, as it is harder to prove that they could in fact not defend themselves in situations where things like grooming start to play. This lack of laws to protect victims and the constant shaming makes it not only harder for the victims themselves, but also easier for the perpetrators to feel emboldened into committing these acts. The Japanese police do not take these things seriously, especially when it comes to being followed or stalked. A great example of this being the situation that happened to a Japanese plus-size model named Mary Egbuchelam, who mentioned on her Twitter a case where she had to deal with a stalking situation. She tweeted out, "I don't really want to write this, but I wanted advice. I saw that a young man who I did not know had suddenly bypassed my residence auto lock and come into my home. I was scared, so I reported it to the police. 2 officers came, so I really thought I was safe. But they told me, the man says he won't leave until he talks to you. And you're both adults, so why don't you try speaking face to face, huh?" She says, "If I just talk to the perpetrator, then what's the point of calling 110, which is the number for the Japanese police?" Mary elaborates further on the encounter, saying that when she became upset and asked why the police couldn't deal with something obviously illegal, one of the officers left on a bicycle and said, "Well, do as you wish." So stunned, she called police station's community safety section, but was told half-heartedly by someone there to just have the remaining officer assist her. I ended up talking over the fence with the perpetrator for over 3 hours in a bizarre conversation. The officer just stood next to me absent-mindedly. But Mary wasn't the only one having to face such absurd responses from the police. On October 26, 1999, a little before 1 p.m., Shiori Ino, a 21-year-old university student, would be stabbed in the chest while she would be entering JR Okegawa Station in Saitama. She bled to death while being rushed to the nearby hospital. Ino's assailant was a local man who had been hired by Kazuhito Komatsu, a 26-year-old man that Ino briefly dated earlier in the year after meeting him at a game center. When they met, Komatsu had given Ino a false name and had lied about his age, and after just a few dates, he began to simultaneously lavish her with expensive gifts and emotionally abuse her. Ino tried to break up with him, but Komatsu would not accept that she no longer wanted to see him and became even more abusive. So he began to phone her home and make threats to both her and her family. And after 3 months of enduring this, Ino finally went to the police with evidence of even Komatsu and his friends breaking into her home, only to be told that they could not help her, as they claimed that she had accepted gifts from Komatsu and that she was at fault for doing so. Komatsu and his brother ultimately put out a bounty on Ino, which finally led to her death. This event sparked outrage in Japan and prompted people to finally take a stand against stalking. But even now, years after this happened, nothing really has changed, and stalking has actually increased a lot more thanks to things like social media. Technology makes it so much easier for stalkers in Japan to find locations of their victims and take their stalkings to the next level. A great example, this very popular story that came out on the 1st of September 2018 of a 26-year-old man by the name of Hibiki Sato, who found a pop singer's location by zooming into a picture and looking into her eyes. He claimed to have recognized the bus stop and proceeded to show up, stalk the victim, and even sexually assault her. Another example of a situation similar, in 2016, another Japanese singer by the name of Mayu Tomita was left in critical conditions due to a fan stabbing before one of her concerts, after he had stalked her for initially returning the gifts that he had sent her earlier. Prior to this, Tomita had contacted the police because she had been cyberstalked by this fan, receiving death threats, a lot of obsessive tweets, thanks to her house, and the police had ignored her situation, claiming that social media threats were not a big deal. So she later sued after she recovered from the attack, citing that the government hadn't done enough to protect her. So what can be done in cases like this where situations are not taken seriously enough and often even normalized? I think Japan needs to start proposing better methods for women who find themselves in this position, as the police seems to take it really lightly when cases like this arrive, and it's not really fair to the victims who will seek out help only to be told that their cases are not important enough. The situation can tend to be so bad sometimes that even foreign women in Japan are not facing cases of stalking and assaults, and they get even less justice than the Japanese women, as they view foreigners as more likely to commit crimes. So often they cannot defend themselves in situations like these unless they have a native Japanese person as a witness to back them up. Foreign women, as well as Japanese women, deserve so much more protection as the ones that they currently have in place. There has been a Me Too movement that has started in Japan after it caught enough attention and after they witnessed what had been happening in America. But it seemed to have started to die down, and again, not much seems to be changing. This was my video for this week. I know that I haven't posted to my channel in a while. We've been having a bit of a rough time lately for this last month or so. But I will be trying to post a little bit more often. So keep up with me if you want. Bear with me please if you like my content. I'm not gonna stop posting on the channel. It just may take a little longer than usual. Also, I just hit 100 subscribers. I think I'm at 101 right now, which is a massive deal for somebody like me. I honestly started this channel during quarantine. Well, actually, I didn't start this channel. I started posting on the channel during quarantine, but the fact that since quarantine, I just kind of posted willy-nilly, and now I'm like at 100 subscribers. I'm really thankful. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for everybody that subscribed to me. Anybody that watches my videos and who just supports, who comments, who like. But yeah, I'll post the next video sometime. I don't know, I'm very awkward, and I'll see you guys in the next one.